Welcome to the Pittsburgh Gal Principal Podcast, where women school leaders and teachers come to share their school and classroom stories about teaching, learning, and leading. If you are a woman leader or teacher, I would love to have you on the show and share your story. Please connect with me on Twitter at eclaire_ahs or following my blog at pittsburghgalprincipal.wordpress.com. This is episode 15 of the Pittsburgh Gal Principal. Hope you enjoy the chat. Good evening, everybody. I have Rebecca McClellan Crawley with me this evening, and she's a science and gifted educator out in New Jersey. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you? And school started for you, correct?
It did this week.
Okay, oh, wow, your first week. And just for the listeners, I am talking to her on a Friday evening, so how dedicated is that? She's talking to me on a Friday after the first week of school. Everyone knows how exhausting that is. So, Rebecca, can you just give us just a brief, background about how you got started in education, how long you been an educator, and then how it led you to where you're at today?
Sure. This is my 19th year in education. I started back in 1997 with going back into the high school of the town where I had initially grown up and then moved out of. And I really wanted to go back in there and make a difference. And so I did my student teaching there and then got offered a job at the middle school and have been in education and loving every single minute since then. I have taught a variety of courses over those years. So I've taught biology, honors biology, marine biology, AP environmental, physical science, you name it, done them all, and have had different coaching roles, formal and informal. I've been a choir director. I've been a cheerleading coach. I've been an Odyssey of the Mind coach, a Future Problem Solvers coach, a National History Day coach. Lots of different things just because I love working with kids and I love making a difference in education. And there's so many different ways that we can get to know our kids outside of the classroom.
Absolutely.
Different personalities that they show you outside of just a little classroom. So at this point, I'm teaching gifted and talented enrichment in West Windsor. I started my career in Perth Amboy, but now I'm in West Windsor. So it's two completely different demographics, different populations of people altogether. But
totally different school district?
Totally different school districts, two different towns altogether. My first experience, and for 15 years, was in a mostly Hispanic school district, right on the bay, gorgeous, right on the Atlantic. And I would take kids down and we would explore the waterfront. And we would go to different parts of the watershed and do water quality investigations and talk about environmental injustices and lots of very, very cool topics. And spent a very long time working with awesome students and staff. And then thought that I might want to go into supervision. Mm-hmm. And the same year that I was awarded the Presidential Award, I was asked by a few of my friends in their district in West Windsor if I would consider becoming a science supervisor. And I wasn't sure at the time if I wanted to do it. Applied for it, got it, did it for 2 years, and missed children terribly. And said, at some point, maybe this is something that I want to come back to. Mm-hmm. But where my heart is right now, I love working with kids. So I like to empower kids, and I like to be their champion. And there's that part of me that missed it so much that for 2 years as an administrator, all I did was work with our education foundation in West Windsor to get grants so that I could work with kids after being a supervisor all day long.
Okay, wow. Well, tell me a little bit about the school that you're currently at. Is it big? Is it small?
Okay, so it is 2,000 students, 2,200 students in it right now, and it's 6th through 8th grade.
Wow.
We have
That's
10 in the
huge.
School district that I'm in now. So I went from a smaller district to a very, very large district. We have 2 middle schools, 2 high schools, 2 upper elementaries, 3 elementaries, so it's a huge district in a suburban/rural neighborhood.
Okay.
Lots and lots of pharmaceutical, biotech, and farms, all sharing the same space. So it's unique.
Yeah, that's very unique.
Very
Sounds
different counties as well. So it's a very interesting place. It's lots of fun.
It sounds like it's right for a lot of community partnerships.
Yes. So it's a really unique place to be. Where, as far as gifted education is concerned, we are very fortunate to have a district that has the vision to understand that you cast a very wide net and you catch all the little fishies.
Okay.
Instead of simply just testing everyone, determining a cut score, and saying, all right, well, you've met the score, so you can get enrichment. We allow students to try out different programs, and they self-select into our enrichment program in the middle school. So I get to work with kids who show a lot of task commitment,
Okay.
who are extremely motivated and want to come in and make a difference. So they can work with me on a future problem-solving adventure and try to solve either hypothetical or real problems. And there's lots of creativity involved. They can produce short stories with me. They can pick their own inquiry project, and they do a lot of research on their own in that, and sort of a genius hour type of philosophy. They can work on a National History Day project, which is very cool because you get a lot of kids who come in thinking one thing about history, and that then over the course of the year get very jazzed up about research. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see that transformation in them over the course of a year or two in exploring a topic that they might not have been that interested in initially. And then I have also started 2 years ago. One of our programs is called Prism for All. The whole Gifted and Talented program at the middle school is called Prism.
Okay. Well, is that an acronym? We like acronyms in education.
Of course it is in education. It's Performance Reveals Individual Student Magic.
Okay.
So it's based on Joe Renzulli, and that students are going to really show you ultimately their giftedness. Mm-hmm. Right? So if they are committed to the task and they are above average intelligence and they're that creativity and they're really, really sticking to all those things, we're going to bring them into the program. And if they're not, then they're going to revolve out naturally. Mm-hmm. So we go through this philosophy with them at the very beginning part of the school, and they have an orientation, and then they decide if they want to stay with it. And then if they do commit to it, then we just tell them, then you're with us for the year.
And you mean all students?
All students.
Okay.
And who wants in. So I have upwards anywhere between 220, 230 that sign up with me at the beginning part of the year.
This is 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, or just?
That's 8th grade. At any point during the day.
Okay.
During a study hall, they come in during a lunch. If their teacher is absent and they have a worksheet or something else that they're working on and they can do that for homework, they'll come in and they'll do research in the room with me. So I may have, my superintendent has come into the classroom at times just to see what we're doing. And especially like within a makers program, he'll come in and see it and goes, wow, there are a lot of students in here. I did not realize you had this many students.
I was going to say, is there a cap or something?
No. Back in the day when I taught science, there were always caps, right? We would say, oh, no more than 24 because it's very dangerous.
Right.
But this is a very different type of classroom.
Sure.
So beanbags, there's yoga balls, there's some kids sitting on the floor, there's some kids sitting out in the hallway, the door's propped open, and they're all buzzing because it's
what they want to do.
Right. So they come in. There's hardly ever a single problem with kids just coming in and immediately getting to work. They're always buzzing. The room is on its own little frequency. So they go through this Prism for All curriculum in the very beginning. One part of it was to talk about personality types.
Okay.
And what I had noticed 2 years ago is that none of the students were really identifying themselves as being in a self-selected program, kids who thought of themselves as creative, as artisans, as makers.
Okay.
Now, clearly, there are these types of gifted individuals in the school building.
Absolutely.
You could not make the assumption that there were not. They just weren't identifying themselves as being that. So I opened it up and I started a Maker Ambassador program within the school. And within a couple of weeks, I had tons of kids that were signing up and started working with them on design thinking and some using things like Little Bits, which are just electronic circuit kits, small things, marshmallows, spaghetti, tape, little pieces of candy and things like that, just to get them thinking creatively about materials in ways that they had not usually thought of them, to really stimulate their creativity. And the following year, I had gone from having somewhere between 20, 30 regulars that were coming in to then 70.
Oh, wow.
Students where I had to divide it up. And had more kids sign up for the Maker Ambassador program. And what made it more unique was that it wasn't just about designing, because we do have a STEM class for kids who are in the 8th grade, and they can go and they can do the same types of things that we're doing with Arduinos. But it was really more, how do I get kids to take a risk and have the freedom to fail in a non-graded environment, in a place where they could go back to the drawing board and not be so conscious all the time about their grade, because we're in such a high-performing school district that my students are constantly feeling pressured that even if it's a 97 or a 98 or a 99, it's just not good enough. One of the quirks of being gifted to begin with, to have that perfectionist streak, but it's also something more within our district of it's just so competitive. And you get that a lot in your really high-performing districts where the kids are just all really fixated on, I must be the best of the best. And that, unfortunately, we have, within our own educational construct, told them that that's because of a grade.
Right.
So they equate being the best of the best with the best grade and not with the whole child. Spent a considerable amount of time within the Maker program and with another program called Community Problem Solvers, and really focusing in on the whole child, that there's something bigger than the grade, that there's something bigger than the competition, that it's your whole development. It's the foundation starts with, do I care about myself? Am I healthy? Am I making good choices? Do I have the right coping strategies? Am I a balanced life? And that's a really important lesson for the students to learn, because they even told me last year at the end of Prism for All. I do a lot of work. You've probably seen it on Facebook or on Twitter, where I put pictures up of all the whiteboard stuff. And it's always, tell me what you learned today. And they just write up anonymous statements of 6-word story or what you tell your teachers. And when I asked them, what would you tell your teachers? A lot of it revolved around the social emotional well-being of my students. So I wish that my teachers knew that it wasn't me begging for extra credit. Or I don't want a trophy, or I wish that I could just make a friend in the class, or they're just heartbreaking stories that you see up there, and then you say to yourself, I can't be the only one that sees this.
Sure.
That's why I use a lot of that to tell the story of my students and to be their advocate and their champion, to get it out there, because it can't just be my students that feel this way.
Absolutely, it's not.
It's in my district and the kids in my state, it's kids everywhere that feel this way, right? And we do so much to tell our stories as teachers, but I just want to be the voice for the kids.
Sure.
No, there's so much that they really, really want to say if we just empower them.
Rebecca, can you share with us a little bit, or a few examples, I guess, of some student projects that, your students have done in the past, or even some that they're working on right now?
Sure. They're constantly working on things. So I'm very fortunate that I started teaching so young. I kid. Because I'm still friends with students that I taught back in 1997. I actually just was in Disney World over spring break and saw some of my first students. And
by accident?
Nah, by accident.
Oh,
and so
cool.
I kept seeing on their Facebook feeds that they were there. And we met up and we had lunch. It was awesome. But it was my first year teaching, and I had a whole bunch of kids that would go with me, and we would test all different water sources in our town.
Power of technology.
And so they had evolved over time into this different watershed study, which eventually then turned into adopting a local pond called Willow Pond. And we were tracking data. and it was not very good. So it was an abandoned clay pit that would just fill up with water with the rain, and then people would hang out there.
Okay.
It was not always the best place to take kids after school hours, but during school hours, very safe. And the kids just really started to notice there were migratory birds that were coming through, and it was the only freshwater ecosystem in the town. And they said, well, somebody's got to take care of this. This has got to be adopted for something. It's, there are fish that have been dropped off here. There are turtles that are living here, and there are these invasive species, and nobody's taking care of it. So we got together, and I was also coaching cheerleading at the same time, and my athletic
director. I have to ask, middle school cheerleading or high school cheerleading?
High school co-ed cheerleading.
Okay. Either way, lots of drama, but go ahead.
Okay. So we were meeting up with the environmental club and with my environmental science class and my marine science class, and we're all brainstorming. And my athletic director, who was also my former elementary school gym teacher, kind of popped in and said, oh, you're talking about Willow Pond? I want to go fishing there. And the kids said to him, like, Mr. Facar, you can't go fishing there. The pH is awful. There's barely any oxygen in the water. There's so much work that would have to be done there. And all these light bulbs came on in my head of, this is real, authentic PBL. So this is, right around 2001, 2002. I'm sitting there saying, okay, so I've been coming up with pseudo PBL for my kids. And now we've got a real, authentic problem that the kids can solve.
Right.
We have dead fish in the pond. We have been tracking water quality data in there, and they want to make a difference. How can we use all of this, guys, to help? And so they started meeting with the Office of Economic and Community Growth. Then they suggested that we sit down and have a meeting with their environmental engineer because they were going through different park renovations. They impressed the engineers so much in the different government offices that they decided that they were going to co-write with them this Green Acres grant. And these were students who, bad news bears, like kids that you would just say to yourself, all right, so if we can get you to pass this high school graduation test at any point,
right,
we'll be lucky. And they worked so hard and did all of this phenomenal research that they, to my knowledge, I think they're one of the only groups of students in the country that have done this, but they had received $700,000 in money to completely renovate this pond and restore it, all based off of their designs. So what would they need? They received a boat. They received lots of, they had to figure out what the American with Disabilities Act would require, because now with the gradient of the walkway, it would require them to put in an asphalt walkway. They put in new fishing piers. They worked with the university to have it stocked. They put in aerators. They put in a security camera that we operated from our classroom. And then they could watch their Willow Pond from our class. And they just continued bringing more and more kids down there, working with the elementary school students in the district, so that over time I was not just teaching those kids. And this was not a one-year project. This was not a graded project. There was nothing that ever went down on a transcript of I helped Willow Pond. Mm-hmm. From students wanting to make a difference, wanting to solve a real problem. These kids then have now gone on. Most of them have master's degrees in environmental science. I have students that have graduated and have gone on, finished their graduate work at Antioch. 2 of them have gone through the Peace Corps. Just absolutely phenomenal kids who were motivated by a local problem and said to me, it always gets me choked up because these are kids that said, this is the first time that I felt like a real scientist. And it just comes organically. If we let kids just go out there and see the problems and let them solve it, they're capable of doing it.
What do you think holds some educators back in doing that?
Because it takes more time, right? It's a lot easier to sort of open up the brain and dump it in. Mm-hmm. And I did a lot of work over the summer as I was officially called a master STEM educator, which I just wanted to be called a master builder from the Lego movie. I mean, but and it was all about problem-based learning and how
Was this in your district or like
for the state of New Jersey.
Okay, wow, cool.
So we had some Milken award winners, and then we had some presidential awardees that were working with the state to help teachers as they're working to use the next generation science standards in true spirit of how they were written.
Right.
And looking at our lessons and saying, well, how can we, quote unquote, align what we used to do before to the next gen? Because most of what we did before really isn't next generation science standards. You know, buying a kit and telling kids that there's one right answer is not true spirit of the next generation science standards. It's having kids.
Nor is that really science either.
Not really science either. Some of the things that I remind people about all the time are like, well, if you do follow me on social media, most of the time at the beginning of the year, I want to have a bonfire of all those scientific method posters. Not how it works. And this is not how any of this works. But it just frustrates me because that's where the magic happens, right? I've seen it. I've seen it with kids who have been so turned off by school that they didn't want to even step foot in the door. Mm-hmm. And they felt empowered that they were the de facto experts on something, anything.
Yeah.
That they started coming in and they were participating in their other classes. They were staying after school. They were meeting with these experts and people were listening to them. And that's our job as educators.
Are there lots of other teachers in your school who are as knowledgeable and focused on PBL as it sounds that you are?
There are. When I was the science supervisor, I actually hired several people in those 2 years and worked with a lot of the teachers to do that. I also, anybody that asks me about it, I will be the evangelist about problem-based learning with students. Right. So I will go in and I'll volunteer time. Like here I am on a Friday night. I will go in and I'll talk about it because, with my coffee, I'll go in and I'll talk about it because I have seen what kids who everybody else counted out and said, they're just not gonna produce for you this year. You know, you have the marine science kids. They took that class because they don't want to take chemistry. So just, take it easy on them. Take it easy on them. What? We're going to be exploring the waterfront. How much fun is that? So it was just, and I have kids now that I ask them, do you want to solve hypothetical problems? Do you want to learn about them and predict what could be some underlying causes to these problems in the future with future problem solvers? Or do you want to maybe look into the community problem solving aspect of that where you identify local problems? Because in New Jersey, we have quite a few.
Don't we all?
Yeah. So we just sat there brainstorming things. And last year, their big thing was that the number of students that were feeling stressed about school and to be successful and the need to change our system was so intense that they wanted to tackle that. So here I had last year, and they're continuing their project. Students who were 12, turning 13 over the course of the school year, running lessons about stress and coping strategies for their peers, meeting with mental health counselors, meeting with our superintendent, meeting with all of our district administrators. They were teaching teachers in our school, in the 2 sending elementary schools, and in the high schools about the stress that they feel as students. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. To say, we are actual human beings. We are very stressed out. Mm-hmm. At school, that's our safe place.
What were some of their, I'm curious, what were some of their recommendations, or were they making recommendations?
So they need to learn time management. This is one of the things that they have said, is that people tell them don't procrastinate. But then no one ever teaches kids how not to.
We do that a lot in education.
Don't stress out, right? And they would say to me, well, that's lip service.
Be responsible.
That's lip service. We know what that means. We're 12 years old. You gotta be? That's really good. And then they would go home and it would be told to them, well, why did you get a B? Why didn't you get an A? Because the A is, the way that you get ahead.
Right.
And I understand it because in either location that I've worked, it has been with mostly immigrant populations where it's first or second generation, and the desire to do right by your child and to get them ahead and to make sure that they have a future is so significant you want to put everything into it, right? And if we're doing a little bit and it's good, then great, must be. We do everything.
Right.
But then every single after-school activity, and we get them an extra tutor for that, and we put them in swim lessons, even if they don't like it. We just put them in there so that it's all the keeping up with the Joneses stuff.
Yeah, lots of overscheduling.
Yeah, so they're completely overscheduled, and my students would go in there, and I was like, I don't know. I mean, is this just what you hear from your peers, or do you have real hard data to support this? So they were designing surveys, and they were interviewing kids, and they actually, I mean, they collected survey data that the school and the district have never collected, and they sat down with superintendent and the principal and all the health teachers and the guidance counselors and said, something's got to be done about this. You know, we know that we're in a unique situation. We were in the New York Times. Our superintendent wrote a 16-page letter saying the reason why so many of these changes are happening in our district to focus in on the whole child is because we have, in our last gifted and talented review, just very shocking numbers of students with being sent out of district for mental health evaluations,
Sure.
for suicide ideations, for just things that you know is there in every school, but is much higher in our school population. And we wanted to, as a school district, help our students understand that we are there for them, and help the parents understand while the academic success of our students is important, laying a stronger foundation for their social emotional well-being is more important than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Did you watch the TED Talk that I posted on Twitter yesterday? Probably not. My superintendent sent it to me. It was a young boy who had just turned 13, and the whole message that he was sending was, you know, often adults ask young people what they want to be,
right,
or what they want to do when they grow up, and he said, I want to be happy. Have you seen it?
I have. I actually start out my discussions with parents, and the first slide says, what do you want your child to be? And then it goes into that TED Talk.
I love that kid.
When I ask them, that's what they want.
Right. I mean, I think that's what we all really deep down really want.
But do you want to know what my parents want me to be? I'm like, sweetie, and when I teach college as well. So I'm an adjunct professor. I teach informal science education, which deals with citizen science projects and being an informal science educator or being a teacher and planning field trips. And I say this to the students in there, you know, you're 21 years old, and if you've selected a major that you didn't want, but you're living somebody else's dream, I'm telling you at 42, it's not a happy place to be.
Yeah.
You've got to be doing what you want to do. So it just breaks my heart when there are kids in my program or in another class or in an after-school activity, and they're saying, well, I'm here because it looks good on my resume. Mm-hmm. And in our district, it goes down to the middle school level, sometimes even lower, where I'm doing this because it looks good for colleges.
Right.
We lay a really solid foundation for a joyful love of learning.
Yeah. So
we need more of an education.
Absolutely. So what are some of the, from your opinion, like some systemic changes, I guess, that could be made, should be made, so that we are...
Ideal world, what would happen?
Yeah, ideal world.
Yeah. I think about this probably more hours than I should.
I think a lot more people are thinking about it and talking about it. At least I see. It's starting, the message is starting to grow, the concern is starting to grow.
Right.
Which is good.
Within my own students, too, because I'll ask them within the Maker program, what do you like about school? What would you change about school? And they are very opinionated.
Mm-hmm, sure.
7 years old, they will tell you what they like, I like lunch. I like recess. I like gym.
Right.
I like classes where I get to pick who I'm working with.
Sure.
And then we put this false construct up for our kids, and we're like, all right, so if you complete anywhere between 90% to 100%, then you're going to be in there and you're going to get the grade. So one of the first things that I would do is really try to pull away the focus from the grade, more on, are you achieving a mastery of a standard versus what did you do to get the A?
Right.
And that takes a lot of time because it's not just the kids. It's
no.
Re-education of all of the adults that have gone through these systems that have trained kids for years to be workers on an assembly line.
And did it themselves. I mean, that's the experience.
And especially if you're in a very successful school district,
there's it's even harder.
Anybody to change, right? This is the model that we know. We know how to work through it. And if you are especially affluent, you can pay to make sure that your child is even more successful. Right? It's the zip code barrier. I would love for kids, no matter where they are, for people to just believe that they can solve real problems, to give them an opportunity to say, let's identify a local problem, regardless of the subject matter, and let's go out there and make a difference in the world. Because they're going to get all of that content, and they're going to be engaged, and they're going to be excited about doing things without saying, all right, I have to get through this in order for you to be doing really well on the standardized test. And that can't happen in the school where 30% of your teacher evaluation is based on a standardized test.
Yeah. Is that how it is in New Jersey? Is it 30%?
Yeah. So the reality is until all of those other outside things are taken away, will my hopes and dreams come true? Probably not. But could I get more teachers excited about doing that? Yes. Because when I do workshops and I say, look how excited these little guys are. Because I don't teach my workshops. I bring kids with me everywhere. I have ambassadors of makers. I have ambassadors of watersheds. I have my little minions that come with me. Because when teachers can hear from students the impact that problem-based learning and fun and creativity have on them, when they say, now I feel like a scientist, or school isn't boring to me when I'm in a classroom that does this. I feel empowered. I have a voice here. She lets us blog on the class blog. When they say, I can run to that class, and that's the only room that I want to run to in my day. Where
not run away from.
Right. When I run there, because I have a new poem that I want to share. I was crying in class today because my students were asked to go to this black tie event to help with a group that we've been working with called Attitudes in Reverse. The baker's son committed suicide after battling depression. He went to our middle school, and they started a group called Attitudes in Reverse. And it's really to help reduce the stigma attached with and to spread awareness of mental health issues in adolescents.
Sure.
And they come in and they talk with the students. They bring in therapy dogs. So you might have seen that in some of my pictures with the kids. We have these either therapy dog Pomeranians or big sheepdog type of collies. But they're there, and the kids love to work with them because there's somebody there that understands that they're very, very stressed out and normal hormonal imbalance stuff that goes on during middle school. But then there's, 1 out of 5 in our middle schools and high schools and colleges where our kids are battling with demons and their mental health is at stake. And they need the validation to understand they're not different. They're not strange. We're all here to help them. So we've worked with them. They were asked to go, and they were reading these poems that they want to do in a spoken word at this event. And so we're all sitting there just jaws dropped, and we're all crying. And I came home, and I was telling my husband about it. I said, I want to show you the poems. And he was like, I don't know if I'm ready to handle the poems tonight. Maybe another day. And I said, well, the proudest moment for me during that whole I had the feels moment was I have a classroom with these kids that they feel comfortable enough to share the demons that they're struggling with.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's bigger than the poem. It's bigger than going and helping with these community things. It's that within my classroom, they can come in and they can talk about anything. and they do.
Yeah, they absolutely.
Years they've always just come in and talked about anything, and just to say, you give me a voice and you let me say these things, and you amplify my concerns as a student, because sometimes we forget, like, they need us to do that for them, to say y'all want to hear from you.
Right. That's amazing, Rebecca. I'm glad you shared that story. That's incredible. Now, I kind of just have one final question, because I have no idea what it is. And it's maybe not even related to anything you've talked about before, but maybe it is.
Sure.
Project 24. I saw that on your Twitter profile, and I don't know what that is.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Should I know what that is? Should I be embarrassed? I'm saying I don't know what that is.
No, it has nothing to do with anything in international politics. It is part of the Alliance for Excellent Education.
Okay.
So I've been working with the Alliance for Excellent Education to help promote equality and digital literacy.
Okay.
Right? So how do we get our kids not just using technology, but really creating and curating? Okay. How do we get them on there? How do we make sure that our schools are future ready? How do we ensure that students are not just using computers as glorified notebooks with pencils, right? Mm-hmm. So I've presented at Digital Learning Day. Okay. And I said, how do I get my kids down here? Because it's one thing for me to get down here and talk about the cool stuff that my kids do, because they run everything. People often ask me, well, how do you have all this understanding in all these different subject areas? And the simple answer is I don't.
The kids do, right?
I don't know everything. And it shocks my own 6 and 8-year-old. Like, but you know everything. You're a doctor. I said, I don't know a lot of stuff, children.
When they're 14, it'll be the opposite.
Right. Yes. Mother, you know nothing at all. But right now I have them fooled.
Yes, I won't tell them.
No, so I brought my kids down and I said, can we have the students present? And it was part of Digital Learning Day and the National Board Conference. And the students actually went down there as the Maker Ambassadors, and they were the only students there at this huge national conference talking about why programs like a Makerspace or Maker Ambassadors are essential in schools.
Okay.
Why teachers really need to consider having that maker mindset in their classrooms, even if they weren't developing a maker space in there. Just that, all right, so first attempt at learning, not, all right, so I did the best that I can, and I'm never going to fix my project ever again. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to try it again. Oh, I got a C on it. It's good enough.
Right.
And just all the different ways that you can be creative within a classroom, ways that you can infuse STEM and STEAM into different projects. So I talk about that with the Alliance, but it's really, I try to get in there as the student voice and bring my kids up to amplify their voice up to that national level so that they can really talk about how much more engaged they are in school. Mm-hmm. They're using tech to not just learn new things, because if they can Google it, they can Google it.
Sure.
Right? And if we're asking questions that can be Googled, we have to stop.
Yeah, right.
The deeper stuff, right? So how can they create an infographic that explains their understanding of that? That's a different way of doing things. How can they blog about it and reach out to classrooms outside of their geographic region?
Absolutely.
All of these different ways that we can use tech. And the kids are excited about doing it. It's cute, too, because I just did a Twitter chat about Minecraft in education. Mm-hmm. And I asked the students, well, what questions would you have? Because I said to them, I don't mind participating and being part of this chat, but I would like to see my students ask questions as well. Can I lead on that? And of course, I asked my students, and they're like, playing games in the classroom, Dr. MC, how can you guarantee that they're not going to be distracted? And I said, oh my God, part of me has done you wrong. Oh no, because there's so much that you can learn from a game, right? Remember Oregon Trail?
No, I don't know Oregon Trail.
No. Okay, so back in the day, when you would get onto your DOS operating system and you would log in and you would play this game, everybody always died from dysentery, right? So there was like the late 80s, early 90s version of game-based learning. Much more sophisticated in the sense of using Minecraft and using other games. My son is twice exceptional. He struggles with social cues, but is brilliant. He is statistically profoundly gifted, which blows my mind every day when I think about how can I enrich him academically, and then I look at other ways that we have to support his needs. And he adores Minecraft. And I know a lot of my students do as well. And I sat there and I watch him every single time, and he walks me through and he shows me all of these alternate universes that he creates, and then portals that he goes through, and he knows, and he's writing down X, Y, and Z coordinates to just like transport all over in this made up world of his. And it blows my mind every time when I look at it and say, this is a child that until well after 3 years old was not expressing himself verbally. And all of this genius that was trapped in there, and things within games that allow him to make these safe places. And now he's talking at 8 and he's telling me about all of the different materials that he's used to make these. And I'm saying, wow, we really need to use a lot more of this in our schools. Like, there's just so much we can see inside of their minds when we use it the right way.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh my gosh. So it's clearly obvious that you are just focused on your students instead of, a prescribed curriculum that can stick, people, I don't know, like the traditional mindset is, this is my curriculum, I teach it, you learn it, you test, and obviously that is like drastically different in your classroom. So that's very refreshing to hear. And I know that when people listen to this podcast, they're going to be like, okay, I love this Rebecca lady. How can I connect with her? So, what is the best way for people to reach out to you and find out more about what's going on in your classroom?
Sure. I'm usually on Twitter and very accessible through Twitter. My handle is Beck_chirps, like Beck tweets, tweet. Because I'm sassy like that, people. Sassy. That is pure genius. Someday someone will truly appreciate the geniusness of that.
Okay. Is there a blog post or
there is. I have EduBeck at blogspot.com, and I also have my class website that has lots of stuff that my students put on there, which is 814-cms.blogspot.com. And it's always just such an honor to talk with people and share when you meet people in your tribe, and then you get to talk about things that you love and education and how we can all change the world. Because I think what's glorious about Twitter and all forms of social media is that it's opened up the possibility for us all to connect and find each other and then say, all right, so I'm not crazy. I am not alone in believing that we can do better by our kids. We can nurture them, we can support them, we can get kids, they were born scientists or, they were born creative, and somehow we've crushed these ideas out of them, but we can do better. We can stop it. We can.
Absolutely. Okay, well, great. Rebecca, thank you so much for spending these 45 minutes with me on a Friday. I really appreciate it. And, just spending this time with you on a Friday makes me realize that I'm not the only one who thinks about things like this on a Friday night.
True, you're not.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
You too.
All right. Thanks, Rebecca.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for listening in on the Pittsburgh Gal Principal Podcast. I am always excited to connect with women in education, learn how they are balancing work and home, as well as challenging the status quo about what it means to be a successful woman. My podcast is all about elevating the voices of women, so please share these stories with your friends and your colleagues. Find me on Twitter at eclaire_ahs. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.